I'm going to stop when I want to stop, not when you want to stop.
On this episode of Bound to Talk, Malicious Melissa interviews Master John. They discuss 24/7 DS relationships, servitude, mind games, what it's like to have a live-in slave, and other aspects of the BDSM community.
Hi, I'm Malicious Melissa and my co-host,
Adam.
And our guest, Master John. Thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me.
So, Master John, how did you get into the BDSM scene?
The BDSM scene. Well, getting into the actual scene itself, being one-on-one and in groups with people face-to-face was a very long evolutionary process. And in thinking about a lot of things coming here tonight, I remember back in 5th and 6th grade locking my neighbor in my clubhouse so that I could hear her scream. And she would scream and she would cry. And then I'd let her out and she'd go home. And sure enough, a day or two later, she'd come back. And we did that
to do it again?
For probably 2 years.
That's awesome.
And, back then I was probably just the little stinker neighborhood boy. But looking back, this has always been part of who I am. But I don't think it was probably till 2004, when the internet started, the internet helped us all kind of connect. That's when I started realizing that there was a scene, that it wasn't just something, in the advertisement at the back of a porn magazine for leather bars. Mm-hmm. There was a website, if we're going to reference websites,
sure,
alt.com. And in 2004, I had my first online profile, Master John, and met a couple who some people may know, Padre and Mrs. B, and they were moving to Chicago. And through conversing with them, we kind of bartered. I let them stay in an apartment while they were getting settled when they first moved to Chicago, and Padre taught me rope, taught me my first ties in 2004. And that was the first introduction to the fact that there was a scene, that, the thoughts that I had in my head were not just something weird or perverted, that there were other people just like me. So, and then certainly the last 13 years have been, a growing process. You meet more people, you go to clubs, you become a regular, and people become your friends, on many levels. So,
what do you think drew you to it, though? Do you have
it's
any
genetic.
idea?
It's genetic. I think that all of us have, we're all like a puzzle, and we have our own pieces, and there are other people, events, experiences that kind of fill in your own puzzle to make you complete, and that goes to, the entire dom-submissive dynamic, the yin-yang. So I was always looking for that part of the world that completed me as a person.
And do you believe you found that?
I think yes and no. I found it. I had a relationship from 2006 to 2012 with a woman who is bisexual, and she was a bondage model and a massage therapist, and we had a great relationship. And it was almost so intense that there's no way it could have lasted, any longer than it did. So I found it, and it ended in 2012. And, what doesn't kill you makes you stronger, and still kind of evolving.
So with that relationship, are you looking for something like that again? Or is that like a one-time experience where you did it and now that roller coaster's over?
Well, I'm like Hannah Montana. I have
I know Hannah Montana.
Miley Cyrus, Hannah Montana, live the best of both worlds. So I work and live in a white-collar corporate world. Mm-hmm. I have kids and a family who don't know about this aspect of my life.
Okay.
So I live, either on one side of the fence or the other at any given time. So finding someone who fits into both of those, a woman I can take to a black tie event,
sure.
who's wearing an egg vibrator inside of her while I control it in my pocket while we go through the reception line. It's not easy to find. So.
And you did find that? I did that?
Yes, for sure.
Okay, that sounds good. So what types of roles do you play, and which are your favorite?
Roles as far as Dom sub or just role?
Just
well, I'm
100%
Dom.
So never switching?
No, I have tried.
You did try, okay.
My ex tied my hands behind my back and I could not get an erection. And that was the only time in my entire life that I could not get an erection. So that was an experiment and we learned a lot from it. But no, I get off on seeing what turns somebody else on. I don't have any, people say, what do you like to do? Well, I like to get into somebody's head and find out what makes them wet.
So yours always turns into sex? You never just keep it?
Well, 2 points. Number one, I've never really played casually. I know that there are people who will go to a club on a Friday, Saturday night and meet a new person and they'll play. So I've never been into casual play.
You've never tried it, never wanted to?
Never wanted to.
Okay.
I think that the mental connection is as important as the physical connection. Mm-hmm. So in some respects, it normally leads to sex, but that's mostly because I'm with a partner who, I otherwise have a sexual relationship with. But my ex, we were 24/7, so, I'd go to work and she'd have to alphabetize the spice rack and...
Because you ordered her to?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Were you just trying to find little tasks for her to do?
I think in my looking at myself, I probably have a little OCD in me.
Okay.
I like clean. I like order. I don't like a mess.
Mm-hmm.
So on the one hand, it was finding little tasks, but on the other hand, it was laying out how I wanted to live my life and how she could be part of that and help with that.
But those were not tasks that you would just do on your own. Maybe things that you didn't want to do. So it was like a control factor, or things that you wanted done, but you just didn't have time to accomplish.
I think both.
Okay.
I think both. I think certainly there's the day-to-day living, taking care of the house and making sure there's dinner and et cetera, et cetera. But yeah, if she was going to pick me up at the train station, I liked having the control aspect. I'd have her get to the train station 15 minutes early and get in the back seat of the car and masturbate before I got there. And that's probably more of a control thing than
sure.
Accomplishing a task.
And she always listened to your orders?
Always, 100% of the time.
So tell me some of the things you guys did. I know you brought other people in, right?
Yeah. Well, she was bisexual.
So only women.
So we would have parties with other groups of people.
Okay.
And she would be the hostess of the party.
Mm-hmm.
On many occasions, we had somebody like Slave Troy we may meet in the future.
Mm-hmm.
He would serve the party, be in charge of making sure people had their drinks and cleaning up after the party.
Did he do that nude?
On many occasions, he did that nude.
Yeah.
Or actually, for a time, I had 4 or 5 slaves that served our house, solely non-sexual, just in the capacity of service. And I used to have, each one had a white shirt that was short sleeve, and each time they served, they got a stripe mark, almost like the military. So whoever was there always had the most marks on there. He was kind of the head slave at the time. So there was a hierarchy among the slaves.
Was it male slaves and female slaves, or just male slaves?
Primarily male slaves.
Why is that?
Finding women who just wanted to serve and had no interest in non-sexual things was hard to find.
But you did try to find that?
Yeah, we did have some couples who came who were either in the Dom sub or both sub. I guess there was one couple, they were both sub, and they came and served a couple times.
And how did you find those people?
It was great. It was a perfect little lifestyle. We had one guy who was a doctor from out of town would come. He put all the Christmas lights up around my house, and then would come in and cook dinner and give my ex a massage, and massages were always really big in our house. So
because that's what you guys wanted?
that's what we wanted, yeah.
That's what you wanted. So you would get the massages from the slaves as well?
Right.
Okay.
And, part of having people complete me as a dom, the reciprocal was true. People wanted to be submissive and didn't feel complete or like they were worth, doing anything worthwhile unless they were serving somebody. And so it wasn't bossing people around. It wasn't telling them to do something they didn't want to do. I mean, the 3 pillars of all BDSM are safe, sane, and most importantly, consensual. Mm-hmm. So they were there, with their full consent.
So you're meeting their needs, but also getting your needs met at the same time.
Exactly.
So it's just a mutual...
The yin-yang dynamic where 2 people or a group of people complete each other.
How does it feel to control a man versus a woman? What's the difference?
I don't know that there is a difference. I'm not bisexual, so I don't have sex with men. Mm-hmm. But probably for the slaves that served the house, it was more task related. Mm-hmm. Here was the goal. Here's how we want you to achieve the goal. Go do it. So, and in the couple instances where we had women, you almost went a little easier on them. You didn't want to yell too much or push them too hard.
So you were yelling at the slaves?
On occasion, sure.
Because why? They were disobedient?
If they dropped a glass, if they spilled something, if they made a bigger mess than they found. Certainly, and that we had rules and consequences. And
did you lay out those rules beforehand?
Very clearly. Actually, I'm sure everybody has a fetish consent worksheet, a list of do's and don'ts, and we would negotiate with everybody and actually have them sign off on what safe words there were and what hard limits they had.
But even if they were just going to be serving you instead of...
Sure, absolutely.
Okay.
I don't, it's not going to complete somebody if I do something that they didn't want to happen.
Yeah, that makes sense. What were you going to ask?
Well, one thing I'm curious about is the motivation, because for the male slaves, for example, because I know things that we've come across, there's been two main things, or either like overcoming some sort of big obstacle, like with pain or whatever,
pushing the limits.
Pushing the limits, right?
Uh-huh.
Or it's doing something for a beautiful woman or whatever, like that service that. So I'm curious with the male slaves, if they're doing just service work, right? I mean, it's not really like a pain thing.
No.
And if they're doing it for you, instead of like a female dominatrix, I'm curious what, like...
Well, I certainly think that my ex was hot.
Oh, okay.
She was a bondage model.
Okay.
So while they were serving us as a couple, I assume in many cases that, but for the fact that my ex was hot, they probably wouldn't have been there.
Okay, so you were both playing the role of the dom.
Yeah, in that case, yeah.
Okay.
And again, there was a hierarchy. I would tell her what to do, and she would make sure it got done through the slaves.
I see. Okay.
So, and going back to your question about did it always end up with sex, different. A lot of things ended with what some people could perceive as being sexual or a sexual act, but if she peed all over a male slave because that was his reward, I mean, that wasn't necessarily sexually related, but certainly it was a physical act.
Yeah. And you would tell her to do that?
Based on the negotiated dynamic at the time, yeah.
Okay.
And sometimes there were things that we had planned that didn't happen. I actually had a plan with Slave Troy. He likes pee a lot. We had a party that he served, and I was going to have, what waterboarding is?
Yes.
So I was going to have everybody pee into a bucket, and then we were going to waterboard Slave Troy with the bucket. But I ended up talking to some people on FetLife and ended up talking to a doctor in the UK, and we had a very spirited exchange over about 2 days about all the things that could go wrong and how we really didn't want to kill slaves with the pee comes out of your body sterile, but after a couple minutes it is no longer sterile and the germs start to grow, and putting it in the microwave will just speed up the germs, and apparently freezing them causes some kind of exocytes or something else that's poisonous. So,
did you ever do it with water?
Yes.
And how did that go?
It went well. Normally it involved our jacuzzi tub in one way or another.
How would you do it in the jacuzzi?
Hold their head down, tie
down?
their hand behind their back, and then push their head down in the water.
Would that be a punishment or just play?
That was a punishment.
Okay.
For sure.
Did they know what the punishments would be?
Well, part of that consent worksheet, which was 2 or 3 pages, basically outlined what they had done in the past, what they had never done, so what level of experience they had with a certain item. Excuse me. And then how much they really wanted to do that again. So if somebody said, if somebody said I almost drowned once, water is a hard limit, then obviously we wouldn't shove their head under the water. But if somebody said they enjoyed that or got, something out of it, then that was always part of it.
Part of what? The reward system too?
Well, it's, putting someone's head under the water could be a reward.
Yeah, absolutely.
Or it could be a consequence.
Be a punishment.
Yeah, so it really depends on the individual.
But like if the person liked it, that would be the reward, right?
Sure, absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah.
And okay, that makes sense.
Right.
And like what other types of punishments and rewards would you do?
One of the rewards was definitely massaging my ex. That was, a great reward for some people. Consequences, we had a very large dog cage. People would be banished to the dog cage. We did have one slave who spent a week with us, came from Denver, and he started in the basement in an empty room. He had to sleep on the floor. He did not have a pillow. He did not have a blanket. And then each day, as his service was satisfactory, he would be rewarded with a pillow, rewarded with a blanket. Eventually, by the end of the week, I think he even had a mattress.
So what made you do that particular play?
Again, I think it's, I don't have anything that I have to do or need to do. I think it's...
So there's no, particular fetish?
No.
Okay.
No, my fetish is watching a woman orgasm.
Okay, really?
Which is not easy to do in a lot of cases.
Why is that?
Some women don't orgasm. Some women need a lot of foreplay. Mm-hmm. And certainly in the BDSM world, these are not virgins. They're very experienced men and women who, need more than, hey, baby, I want to pull your hair.
To get to that point.
Right.
So back to the rewards and the punishments. What other types of things?
Well, another example of something that could be a reward or a punishment. I made my own homemade vac bed. Went to Home Depot.
I don't know what that is.
So if you imagine a rectangle made out of PVC, and you drill holes into the inside of the PVC.
Okay.
Then you cover it with latex or plastic.
Okay.
And the person goes inside, and you hook a vacuum cleaner out to the end, and it sucks all the air out, and you basically cryovac a person. They're
have
completely
the air tube?
immobile. We used, in most cases, we used a snorkel from a swimming set.
Okay.
In some cases, we let the person have their head hang out the top, and it was just everything from the neck down, completely immobilized. And then that gives you the opportunity. It's a form of bondage. Take the vibrator over their body, or some type of fear play, turn all the lights out so they don't know what's happening.
They could see under that?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, it was clear plastic for a long
okay.
time. We ended up replacing it with red latex, which looked much cooler but wasn't as practical. So.
And what about some of the punishments?
Beatings, whippings, spankings.
You said yelling too. You would yell at
Yeah,
them.
yeah.
Did it feel natural to do that?
Yes.
Like because you were actually angered by what they did or didn't do? So it didn't
In some
feel
cases, actually angry. In other cases, getting to know somebody, you know that you need to raise yourself to that level to motivate them to get what needs to be done. So again, it's getting to know somebody. Somebody like Slave Troy performs much better when you're yelling at them.
I never had issues with him. He did everything that I said, and I never had to yell at him or anything. So, yeah. I mean, I didn't ask for anything too crazy either. It's mostly just domestic servitude, and then the reward is, massages and things like that.
Right.
Yeah, so that's interesting. Anything else that you can think of as far as that?
Well, going back to safe and sane and consensual, I had gone to a lot of different educational retreats.
Okay.
In 2009, there was an event called Beat Me in St. Louis, where I met Simon Bdsm, who does suspensions using plastic wrap. So, again, something could be a punishment or a reward. I, on a couple occasions, would almost put somebody in a cocoon wrapped in plastic wrap and suspended, and then their girlfriend would be involved in a threesome or foursome, and they'd have to watch
it,
and they couldn't participate in any way. So
that's cool.
yeah.
So with the safety, you took classes to make sure that you could go far with it?
Took classes. I took a 6-hour breath play class taught by Jareth from Galleria Domain. The first 3 hours of the class was CPR certification. The next hour was all the reasons you should never participate in breath play. And then the last 2 hours were here's how you do it.
If you're going to do it,
right?
Then
if you're going to do it, and
go.
now you've signed the waiver, here's how you're going to do it.
Did you have people signing waivers?
Yes, part of the fetish consent worksheet was their
sign.
signature and releasing everybody from liability. I think that's important. I think it.
Do you think that would hold up in court?
It depends on the state. It depends on the local laws. In some cases, yes, and in some cases, no.
What about...
From what I've read, every jurisdiction can be a little bit different.
Okay.
And there's also a question of if somebody consented to X, but you did X plus Y,
sure, then
did
that
they
changes
consent
things.
to that? So
that's interesting. Did you ever run into any issues?
No issues legally per se. There were a couple times where people tried to blackmail either myself or somebody I knew, and getting through that was kind of a scary ordeal, threatening to go to the police or something like that. And nothing ever actually happened, but you feel it breathing down your neck. It can get scary.
How do you handle something like that?
I think my best suggestion is to keep the communication open. Talking on the phone or in person rather than sending nasty emails. My rule with emails always was if I draft something that could be
brought back to you,
I would wait a day, and then if after 24 hours I still wanted to send it, then I would send it.
That's smart.
So
yeah, so you're thinking clearly.
Right.
But you didn't have to resort to any legal to get things resolved?
No legal issues. And in the group of people I know, I don't think there ever have been any. I think generally, and part of only playing with people I think is you minimize that risk a little bit.
Well, you still have to get to know someone, and that takes like a certain period of time. So is that why you're not doing casual play, because you don't really know the person?
Casual play doesn't turn me on. I can't get into somebody's head in an hour.
Okay.
Even if that person may just want to be beaten and have some aftercare and be done.
It's just not appealing
for
to
me,
you.
no.
But even like with welcoming the slaves into your home, like what would the screening process be? How would you do that?
In most cases where people were going to spend the night with us, we did a background check. Same companies that do apartment referrals will do background checks for you. And we had an interview process, both in that questionnaire and then over the phone and then by email. And then when somebody came, we had a whole ceremony when they first came to the house. They'd have to strip down naked, put all their clothes in a basket. They were blindfolded and stood in the next position and were inspected.
Inspected for what?
Primarily, it gave us a last opportunity to ask questions about if they were on any medications. You know, if somebody's taking aspirin, you don't want to beat them because the risk of blood clots are pretty high. You'd ask them, you know, if they were there for the night, when the last time they ate, or if they had any alcohol or drugs. You don't want somebody high or drunk, you know, trying to serve you.
Yeah, that's true. Some of the worst sessions are when they're not sober. Because I think, some people can do mind over matter if they're sober, but when they're not, it's just erratic behavior. And I don't think that they can take as much. And then they can't really give permission for things either.
Well, and all of BDSM is based on the fundamental 5 senses. And if somebody is under the influence of alcohol or drugs, their pain threshold could go up or down. You could really hurt them.
But you would know how far to go.
I've never had anybody use their safe word, and I never sent anybody to the hospital.
So you didn't want to push them to use the safe word?
My goal was always to go up to that fine line that was their limit, put my foot over the line, and then come back. And a lot of that would also include a lot of mental games where they thought I was going to go way past the line, but didn't. I used to have a introductory program where people would come in and I'd make them pee into a bowl. And then they'd put on a blindfold, they'd serve for a while, and I would ask them if they were thirsty. But what they didn't know is I had a second bowl that had apple juice in it. So they'd take the blindfold off, they'd see the same bowl with yellow liquid in it, and I would say either you can drink this entire bowl and that'll be your reward, or if I have to drink it, then you're going to have another consequence. So already their head is spinning. I said I wasn't into water sports, and I feel nauseous, I feel dizzy. But so whether I drank it or they drank it, it was apple juice. And a lot of times there were some pretty good looks when I slammed down the bowl of apple juice, and they thought I was drinking their pee.
Did you ever tell them what it really was?
Not until after.
Yeah,
the ones who did choose to drink it themselves realized really quickly that it was apple juice.
Where did you come up with these mind games?
Oh, I lay awake at night.
Really?
I don't know that everybody realizes that being a dom can be exhausting sometimes because your head is always spinning. You always want to figure out where that line is, how to get a little bit past that line and come back. I spend a lot of my waking time thinking about stuff like that.
That's really clever.
Yeah.
And so what's more rewarding for you, like a physical pain or a mind game, like a head fuck?
I think they go hand in hand.
But you don't.
I don't necessarily enjoy just beating somebody until they pass out.
Mm-hmm. Have you done that?
Yes.
Until they pass out?
Yeah, a couple times.
Okay.
Mostly with my ex. I mean, we were 24/7, so after 5-6 years, you start to run out of things to do, and you have to keep pushing it a little bit. So.
Was that something she was into, physical pain?
She was definitely into physical pain. 100%.
And you were completely happy to give it?
Absolutely, yeah. Every morning started with a spanking. So.
A light spanking or like a hard spanking?
It depended on what I thought was necessary at the time.
Okay. So she had no control over anything. You had control over everything?
Again, I gave her direction, and she was in charge of implementing the plan. So if I said, here's what needs to be done today in the house, here's what we need to do for dinner, here's the people you need to contact. I mean, she was in charge once I, gave her direction.
Did she work, or was she solely...
She worked part-time in accounting.
Okay. So she did have a life outside of this.
Absolutely. And in some cases in the morning, she'd be laying down naked, and I'd take a black Sharpie, and I would leave the list of the things for her to do written on her body so that she didn't forget, because sometimes she forgot. So I thought of writing it down on her body, that way she wouldn't forget.
It's clever.
So
what would be your best scene? Can you think of something that just blew everything else out of the water? Something you did?
Probably the best scene of all time ever was actually with a group of friends. There were 3 couples, 3 males and 3 females. One of the women found out that she had to have a hysterectomy. We talked back and forth for about 2 or 3 weeks and planned out the night. And the night involved, to make a long story short, she was home alone, and the other 2 males broke into the house and kidnapped her, threw a bag over, potato sack over her head, and put her in the trunk of their car. And if there's like a list of 10 things you should never do when you kidnap, I'm pretty sure we did all of them that night. Mm-hmm. Probably not as safe, one of our safer moments. Drove her to the other couple's house, and we basically had a 3-hour ceremony. We named her uterus Crystal, and we spent 3 hours saying goodbye to Crystal. So there was some service where she was blindfolded and had her hands tied, and she had to serve everybody whatever they wanted. Then we had an actual ceremony where we read speeches and goodbye to Crystal. And then we ended up tying her to the bed, and the other 5 people got to do whatever they wanted to her for 10 minutes. So the men certainly had sex with her, and the women had sex with her too. So we wanted to get the full use out of her the last week of Crystal.
Did she know everything that was going to happen, or was it all...
No, she didn't know anything. But her husband was involved and certainly consented on her behalf. So.
Sure, so she basically left the power up to him.
Right.
And then he knew everything that was going to happen. And so, was she submissive? Was that her role?
They switched. They were a couple that switched.
Okay.
So, and he was really into receiving pain. So she got pretty good with the whip and the cane and the crop.
So what about like bad situations besides the blackmailing? Was there anything that you've done that you would never want to do again?
There's only one session that I kind of regret with my ex. She didn't follow the rules. It was the same rule over a couple weeks.
What was the rule?
No drinking during the day.
Okay.
And I came home and had just had enough. So I put her in the dog cage, and then I peed all over her, and I left her alone for like 5 or 10 minutes while I went upstairs to go to the bed to take a shower, actually. And she threw up. She had had too much to drink, and being peed on at that time just really made her sick. So, but that's the only real time. There was one other time I was just learning electrical play. I took a class from Unc Abdul, who literally wrote the book on electrical play. And but it looked, I don't know if you get a shot, but the TENS unit looked a little bit like that. And I had a friend who was a medical doctor who was going to show me all about TENS units and electrical play. And the settings were all off, and he just jolted her clitoris. And it burned, and she was in pain, and it only lasted a second, but I don't think we ever actually played with the TENS unit ever again, because she was pretty pissed about that. So
this was who, your ex?
My ex, yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
What about Violet Wand?
I like the Violet Wand. Violet Wand is usually good in a dark room. Hard to do outside. Mm-hmm. Twisted Tryst is a great place to go. It's twice a year. We used to go to Twisted Tryst and take classes. Running around the woods with the Violet Wand is hard to do because there's nowhere to plug it in.
Yeah, what did you do? A battery power supply?
Up there, I don't think we used the Violet Wand up there.
Okay.
We had an RV, so we used it in the RV. And that's probably, we did take a fear play class. I think one of my goals for the future is to do a little bit more fear play. What
kind of fear play have you done so far?
Mostly mind games.
The ones that you lay awake at night
Yes.
to figure out.
Yeah. I mean, it really...
Do you ever reuse them, or are they always something new?
I don't reuse the same scene with the same person.
No, but with, okay.
But I mean, certainly you spank or paddle or whip
Sure.
somebody more than once.
Mm-hmm.
But if you did the left cheek on Tuesday, you have to do the right cheek on Wednesday. So.
And you were able to keep all this straight.
Yeah. And actually, I had a great paddle that was hard leather on one side and then kind of furry, lover's lane
nice.
type on the other
Sure.
side. And, somebody not knowing if they're about to get whacked and get a bruise versus, the puppy side and just a light tap. There was
So
always,
that was the psychological.
Yeah, between each thwack.
So what comes natural to you versus what you had to learn in classes? You can take a sip. I know you've been wanting to for a minute. Yeah, you're fine. I just fire off all the questions.
What?
What comes natural to you versus, like, what did you learn in classes? So you've taken a lot of classes. You've done electricity classes, rope classes, fear classes. What other types of classes?
I mean, I think anything in the realm of, like, leadership, where it's figuring out what needs to be done and telling somebody to do it, that always came naturally to me.
And you're that way in your job, your day-to-day job?
Absolutely.
Okay.
I supervise a lot of people. They look to me to be told what to do.
Okay.
And I think through that process, I knew I had a paddle and I wanted to use it, but I didn't want to hurt somebody. I just wanted to do it until they got wet or,
I've noticed that with beating women, the women get really turned on by it. Whereas the men, it's like they're trying to get through it, like, to please you. So it's like a different dynamic beating a woman versus beating a man.
Yeah, I agree. I think the best paddling I ever delivered to my ex, I paddled her over about 40 minutes and she was wearing a pair of black thong underwear. Mm-hmm. And as I looked down between her legs, she was so wet that it was dripping like a faucet. Mm-hmm. And that's kind of when I knew I was doing it right.
So then when you guys brought in other girls, did you have sex with them too? Or was it just her having sex with them, you watching?
I think in the beginning it was just her, but as things evolved over time, we had absolutely great open and honest communication. She used to give me massages once a week, and I know on one particular week she said, "You know what, I'm just tired. I don't want to give you a massage." So I had Sarah come, and she's going to give you a massage and your happy ending. I'm going upstairs to read a book and go to bed. So, I think that when you have the level of trust that's required for a DS relationship and you are open and honest with each other, having sex with somebody, isn't going to change that.
But there is a risk of losing your partner to someone else. Do you not feel like that?
My feeling always was, if she goes to have sex with somebody else and wants to be with that person, well, I love her enough to want her to be happy.
So there was no possession.
I was never jealous.
I hear
not.
that from a lot of the guys, and then it's totally different with, like, the women.
Probably true. There were some very dramatic times with other couples we knew, but we really never had any problems. I mean, we would have 8-10 people over at our house, and but we did have, actually we had two roles. Number one, the first person you have sex with that night had to be with me. We would have sex with each other, and then we could go off and kind of do whatever we wanted.
In front of other people, or?
Both.
Okay.
Both. We had our house, we had massage tables set up in one room, and some of the Bdsm gear set up in another. And then we had the jacuzzi tub upstairs, so people would kind of spread out. And I, on the one hand, it was a turn on to watch her with other people, but it was also a turn on to just know she was upstairs screaming.
Screaming what? With what?
Getting banged.
Oh, with someone else.
Yeah.
Okay.
So,
That's interesting. So what about polyamory? Do you consider yourself poly? Because it doesn't sound like there was love involved with these other people. It sounded like it was just sex.
I believe polyamory is a good thing for the right people. I don't think it would be... I haven't found the right relationship that would lend itself to polyamory.
But you do think that you're capable of loving two people at the same time?
I think there's a very big group of people that I love, and some of them I have sex with, and some of them I don't. Mm-hmm. Friends that I have know that I would do anything for them.
Being in love, though, not just loving or caring for somebody. Being so caught
Being
up
in
with
love
one
with more
person.
than one person.
Yeah, being so caught up with one person, and then feeling that same way about someone else, that deep emotion.
I think I could be, but I just haven't met the right person or people
Okay.
that would apply to.
So there wasn't another girl during that relationship that you came across that you wanted more than just sex with?
No.
Okay.
No, deep friendships, though. Deep trust with people. But not somebody I would leave my wife for, or that I wanted to move in with us.
Okay, as like a triad relationship.
Right. Yeah.
But that could have been a possibility?
Yeah.
Okay, so you're not like close to it?
No,
or
not at all.
anything.
I think whatever consenting adults do in the privacy of their home is...
No, I meant
Fine.
for you, not for
Right.
other people.
Right.
Like where does it fit in your life?
It doesn't now, but I
Okay.
don't rule it out for the future.
And why doesn't it now? Family matters?
Family.
Career?
I moved back to the city.
Sure.
I don't think I could have 3 people live in my apartment.
Mm-hmm.
And just at a different place, kids get older, parents get older, you have to take care of them.
Mm-hmm. So what about previous relationships? Was this BDSM lifestyle in your previous relationships?
Some form of it was always in part of relationships.
Your whole life.
I talked about the clubhouse.
Yeah.
Certainly in college there were handcuffs and blindfolds. But I didn't really know what I was doing,
Mm-hmm.
and it was more... back then it was more sexual. The goal was to get each other off, and here's how we were going to do it. It wasn't as psychological or, more than just an hour on a Saturday night.
So then how did it evolve? Did it evolve by you going to classes and gaining more knowledge?
It started when I met the people in 2004 and started learning about the right ways to do things. And then, with alt.com, with the internet really,
Mm-hmm.
finding other people just to talk to. And
To see what they are doing?
yeah, see what they're doing, talk to them. I don't think my mind started coming up with all these different things until that kind of roadblock of this is weird, this is unacceptable, society will never accept this, repress it. Once that repression block was taken away with the internet, I think that's when things really started to take off for me personally.
That you were able to delve deeper into it?
Yeah.
Because there was a community
Right.
of like-minded people?
Right.
So did you feel different and odd before you found out about the community?
I think...
or like it was wrong?
Yeah, no, for sure. I think the society, and you don't even have to go to church or religion, I mean, society in general says that spanking somebody is what, tattooed bikers do, on Saturday night when they get really drunk. They beat their girlfriends up.
Okay.
So, I mean, all of the slaves that ever served our house, all of them without exception were doctors, lawyers, and CPAs.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, it's a real thing for real people of all walks of life.
Well, why do you think there's so many people in this lifestyle in those professions? Because I come across that as well.
Well, I think I hear a lot that somebody who is the boss at work,
Yes.
who's in charge of everything, gets exhausted and wants to come home and be
told
submissive.
what to do.
They want to be told what to do.
Yeah, absolutely.
They want to give up control, which I think makes perfect sense. They come from generally high-stress jobs where there's a lot of anxiety and tension, and you need to find a release for that. And I think BDSM provides a great, healthy release for anxiety and tension for sure. A lot of people are in their jobs because they feel like they have to, and it's not always pleasant to go to work every day, and it gives them something to look forward to after work. But I have learned that everybody's different. Everybody has different past experiences and different reasons for why they do what they do. So it's hard to overgeneralize too much.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, you do hear some people where you come across the stories and you're like, oh, that's why they're into that. Like, now it makes sense. Like, there might be a certain thing in their life that happened. There's one person I know who lost a testicle in an accident, and so his main fetish is ball busting. Mm-hmm. And it's to, like, prove that he's a man and he can take, the most amount of pain. Or, like, foot fetish people where they remember seeing that first, like, foot in, like, a porno, and that's the thing that they're focused on.
Right.
So, like, all these different things. And then in your case, you're the top person at your job, but then you also want to be the top person in your personal life. So how do you let go then? Do you let go just by seeing other people let go?
I have other ways of relaxing. And
okay. I know you do yoga.
Right. Yoga every day, meditation. But there's also kind of hybrid forms in between BDSM and things like yoga. There's Tantra. Mm-hmm. I think practicing Tantra is a great practice. And I don't know if you're familiar.
Do you do tantric sex?
With the right partner. It's got to be somebody who's experienced and know what they're doing. Mm-hmm. But there's also something called oming, O-M. Mm-hmm. And I think that's been a good...
The meditation.
Yeah, a good release for a lot of people, too.
Tell me about your Tantra experience.
I saw my first Tantrika in 2005. Breath work, practicing breathing. Mm-hmm. Didn't involve sex at first. My ex and I saw a Tantrika in Los Angeles in 2008. And that was kind of more sexually based, where I lay on the table and the woman showed my ex what to do to a man. And actually there's a great school in Chicago, which the name will escape me for a second, but I'll think of it. But I've been there several times too. Tantra Nova is it?
Okay.
TantraNova.com. They're a great place to learn in a comfortable atmosphere. But I can't say I've ever had a Tantra partner. It's just not, I haven't met anybody who wanted to do the work. It's not something you can just go do one night.
Did you also practice orgasm restriction when you were doing the tantric practices? Or was that not a part of it? Because you said some of it was sexual based.
Not for the men. I would restrict my ex.
But not for yourself.
No.
Never?
That seems totally silly. No, why would I restrict myself from orgasm? Actually,
because it can be part of a tantric practice.
Right, no, and absolutely, that probably is a big part of it, but...
but it doesn't suit you.
No.
So you're going to leave that part out.
No, and I did study a lot to do with male orgasm. I mean, there's prostate massage where a man with a non-erect penis can ejaculate. Mm-hmm. The flip side is learning to have a physical orgasm where you have those contractions in your body, but you don't ejaculate.
The body orgasm.
Yeah, and then you can stay hard for as long as you want. So I still have the cassette tape that I listen to.
To teach you that?
Yeah.
And were
Nobody
you able
listening
to
knows what
successfully...
cassette tape is.
That's possible. Were you able to get to that point where you could do body orgasms without actually?
Yeah.
Okay. Do you still practice that or no?
No.
How long ago was it?
The last time I did it was probably 2010.
Because I think it's easier if you keep at things like that. So if there's a long
Absolutely.
period of time and you let it go, like you're almost like starting over again because you have to
Right.
train your body.
Right. I just haven't had any need for it.
Okay.
So
But it is a sense of accomplishment. So, you
Yeah.
know, to do something like that, or even to meditate and meditate
Right.
for like periods of time.
right.
Do you practice meditation every day?
Yes. Every night before bed for sure.
Mm-hmm.
And there's actually a meditation studio downtown that I go to several times a week.
Okay.
And they do what I would call regular meditations. They also do gong baths and things like that, other things that kind of tie into the whole yoga program.
Is the yoga program what got you started on all these other alternative ways to relax?
Well, in 2011 was about the time that my relationship with my ex started to fall apart and was
Okay.
clear that it wasn't going to work out. And I moved to a neighborhood in Chicago where everybody was walking around with a yoga mat on their back.
Okay.
And I decided if I was ever going to meet anybody, I was
You
going to
had to
have
get into
I was going to have
yoga?
to buy a yoga mat.
That's funny.
But once you start doing it and practicing yoga, you feel better, you sleep better, and then you start to get to know the quote-unquote yoga people. And that's when I started to learn about other healthy lifestyle changes, meditation, eating plant-based diet, eating organic when you can, et cetera, et cetera. And then that all, kind of comes in a big circle. You get up and do yoga, you eat right all day, you have sex, and then you sleep well, and then you want to get up and do it all over again.
Did the dissolution of this relationship force you into these healthy practices, or were you already doing
I think I
them?
used these things to let go of my relationship.
Oh, so it came prior to
Yeah,
the end of it.
yeah.
Okay.
The trend, probably the last year.
Okay.
So
And what were you doing for stress relief before you found these things?
probably faking like I was exercising. I can't say I was doing anything successfully.
Okay.
My diet was horrible. You go run on the treadmill for a half hour and say you worked out that week. It was not a healthy lifestyle at all.
Mhm.
Yoga probably saved my life. So
Interesting.
yeah.
Was she practicing any healthy things, or not really?
She tried yoga with me.
Okay. You tried to get her into it?
Yeah, but it just didn't work.
It wasn't for her.
No.
Was it
And
just...
she was much more into just not eating and taking diet pills to stay thin. And then you look healthy, so you must be healthy.
Okay.
So
And you knew that she was doing that?
yeah,
And you tried to get her to stop? And
Yes.
Was that part of, what did you say? She was a model?
bondage model.
A bondage model. So
Yeah.
she did what? Shibari Khan?
She was in Taboo magazine a couple times, and then would do photo shoots for other people for different things.
How did you guys meet?
We met on the companion site to alt.com, AFF.com, adultfriendfinder.com. She was the only real woman on that whole website.
That's interesting.
So,
I would not guess that you could find I don't know, somebody of that caliber on AFF. AFF is not known to be that great.
no, not at all. Well, and this was 2005, so
Yeah, so
it's
things
certainly
change.
changed in 12 years.
And I
I'm
think
aging
alt.com,
myself.
isn't it Bdsm.com now? Or they just
Could be.
connect? You're
Could
not on
be.
it anymore?
No,
What
no.
websites do you do?
FetLife. FetLife is the
Collar Space?
Facebook. I've yet to find anybody real on Collar Space. I'm sure there are. I don't put in the time to actually meet somebody. I'm sure there's 1,000 guys for every one woman.
Mhm.
So
How do you find partners now? or
Excuse
even
me.
in the past, how did you
I
find
think the
them?
only way to meet people is in person, whether it be in a vanilla event where the conversation leads to some of your kinks, or to go to a place like Galleria Domain, which is still my favorite place in Chicago, and be face-to-face with people, and you get to know people.
And that's how you find play partners. Do you ever do the online messaging?
Most of the play partners I've found where the intent was to start a relationship with them. If you know OkCupid, there's an entire...
that's how we met, actually.
Okay, so there's 10,000 questions, and 1,000 of them have to do with sex, and 100 of them are BDSM. And when you see somebody pop up that's a 99% match, you know
that they're on the same page.
Yeah, exactly. But then you get to the whole vanilla layer of relationships. You know, do they have kids? Where do they live? Et cetera, et cetera.
So you've dated quite a few people from there, or no?
No. I mean, I had a miserable failure dating a vanilla girl, where she said she was interested in exploring some of these things, and then you put your hands around her neck and she starts screaming and says she's going to call the police.
Was this after your ex?
Yeah, this was after my ex.
Okay.
Maybe there's been 3 or 4 people since my ex, where I've had 1 or 2 sessions with each person.
And they weren't able to go where you and your ex were able to go?
They had kids. They had crazy ex-husbands. They moved out of town.
Okay.
I mean, again...
So it wasn't BDSM related?
No. No, if nothing else, they wanted me to do more.
Okay.
And I just
Do you
decided
take
I couldn't.
in the relationship?
Yeah.
Okay, but what about when you're first getting to know someone? How do you do you start out slow and you progress the level of control?
I think it depends on the person. Some people want to start slowly. Some people want to jump right into it.
But it's not about your needs?
No, it's me figuring out what turns somebody on.
Okay.
If I'm, somebody's not going to be turned on by me blindfolding and spanking them right away, then I'm not going to do that. I had one woman tell me she was afraid of worms. So through maybe the first 10 minutes she was blindfolded, I had soaked some gummy bears in warm water, and I put them on her back, and she thought for sure they were worms and flipped out, and it was great.
Do you just pick people's brains to find out their fears?
I think, the key to a successful vanilla relationship, a DS relationship, I think any your family, is listening. Do more listening. And if you just listen to people, you can usually pick out a lot of fun topics to explore.
But you're exploiting their fears in a good way, but you're still doing that. So if I'm not submissive, but if I come in contact with somebody who is dominant, I'm not going to go ahead and just give you, hey, so this is in talking, this is what I'm scared of, because I know you're going to use it, because I would use it.
Well, you're experienced enough to know that. And I would also say that it was probably 2-3 months of getting to know somebody before anything happened. So.
Before you started with the mind games?
Right. You have to have them let their guard down. After they let their guard down, then they're all yours.
See, that's the thing with me, because I look sweet and innocent. The guard is already down. I don't have to work on that.
Right.
So then I can just jump right in, and then they're, surprised by how extreme I can be,
Right.
So yours is a little bit different. So what about some strange and disturbing things? What have you seen over the years?
I've seen a lot of strange
and disturbing things. I know you have. That's why I want to know. Yeah.
I took a fear play class at Twisted Tryst that actually Wilson taught. He's the owner of Galleria Domain now. Where we went out to a bog, like a wet, muddy area, and we buried 3 feet under the ground, his partner at the time, and she had her hand was above the ground, but her entire body was underneath, and she had a straw to breathe through. And she was supposed to be in there for 2 minutes, and then he was going to let her out. Her safe word was to tap her hand twice, and she wanted out immediately. And not only did he leave her under there for over 10 minutes, but she was tapping and tapping and tapping. Now, they had a very long relationship, and I happened to have had dinner with them a few weeks before where she told me about how she wanted to be beaten, and there were no safe words. She just wanted to be beaten until she passed out. So I knew that this particular couple had that dynamic, but I was ready to call 911, for sure. I thought he was just there to kill her, and we were just going to be the witnesses.
Well, And
So
you didn't feel comfortable stepping in? And like...
No, I was there as the student. I was there to learn. And if nothing else, I was as afraid or more afraid than the woman who was buried at the time. So,
how early on was this, like after getting into the scene?
2010.
And you got it in 2005, so 5 years.
Yeah, 2004. Said? Yeah, I went to Trist 08, 09, and 10 and 11. So yeah, it was one of those years.
So how was it when she got out?
She yelled and screamed at him, threw punches at him.
Oh, okay.
Cried, and then he put a blanket around her, and
then she was fine.
Yeah.
That's interesting. Have you done anything similar or no?
No, probably only with the plastic wrap, where somebody's so tightly bound that they start to get a little panicky. I think the other probably, this is actually at the beginning of my experience, and it was actually at Galleria Domain. I walked into the big play space, and there was a woman standing there alone. She had one leg up at a 90-degree angle. She had a rope tied around that ankle, up over a wood beam and around her neck.
Okay.
And as she was standing there, her leg would get tired and fall down, and it would pull up on her.
Sure.
And, if I knew anything at the time, I knew that you shouldn't do breath play alone. But I also didn't understand what a dungeon was, what a dungeon monitor was, and the entire dynamic of that. And it was actually that time also, I put in 911 into my phone and was ready to press send because I thought there was nobody else in the room at the time that I could see.
Where, at GD2?
Yeah, and I thought for sure she was going to kill herself.
So she had done this to herself?
Yes.
Okay, so there was no one else.
So after about 10 minutes,
okay,
she took the rope off her leg, and a guy came out from like behind a chair who had been watching her because she had a play partner, and then I saw what a dungeon monitor was. It wasn't just some guy standing in the corner. So yeah, it's a learning experience. But
and you didn't
couple
try
times
talking to her to see what was...
that was actually Jareth. She's the one who taught the breath play class at Twisted Trust years later. And I remember telling her about how I almost ran out of there. So
when you saw something like that.
Right.
Okay. What about some other strange and disturbing things that you've seen over the years?
Well, disturbing is a relative term.
That's true.
I think...
that disturbed you at the time.
Yes,
now
absolutely.
Being where you are now, it doesn't.
Absolutely, it didn't. Going back to pushing people over their line, a lot of people will say, I don't do blood. I don't want to see blood. But in their mind, blood is somehow being cut or being beaten to the point where you bleed or something to do with the woman's menstrual cycle. So do you know what a blood slug is?
I do not.
Do you know what a cupping set is?
Yes.
So diabetics can buy at Walgreens those little needles where they just prick their finger just to get a drop of blood.
Sure.
So we had Slave Troy laying down on his stomach, and it's a lancet, I guess you call it, and we pricked his skin and put a cup on top, which sucked. It was a very small hole with a couple drops of blood, but the cupping suction sucked out about a shot glass full of blood.
Okay.
And then you let it sit. And after about 10 minutes, the blood coagulates into like a jello consistency. And then you take it off and you have a blood slug.
And you knew this how?
Research. I don't know. I mean, God bless the internet. So, I don't know where we learn blood slugs. I mean, there aren't really any books out there, so.
Does he still serve you or no?
Not in a couple of years. We still have lunch and
I knew that.
And talk, but
okay.
Yeah.
I think he's still looking for someone that was at that level and that dynamic.
Maybe.
Because it's hard to find that.
Yeah, it is. It is.
Absolutely. That's interesting. So is there anything that you've done that you wouldn't do again?
That I wouldn't do again? I certainly would not invite a slave to come live with me again.
I thought that was just for a week.
Well, it was a week-long interview to determine whether or not he would move in with us.
24/7.
But it's very hard to describe. But I woke up at 5 a.m. my eyes opened, and he was standing over me with my coffee because I had told him I would like coffee as soon as I wake up. And the guy had literally been standing there for like a half hour at 4:30 in the morning. And this was the guy who was in the basement with no sheets or blankets.
Sure, yeah.
And that just freaked the hell out of me. And so I don't want anybody living in my house anymore.
But you thought that you did?
I did, yeah. Seemed like a great idea.
Mm-hmm.
Housekeeper /
Well, you could always
laundry.
lock your bedroom door, though.
Well, and certainly I learned a lot about rules and communication and setting expectations.
Well, especially if they're, I don't know, if they want to listen, I would think it wouldn't be that hard to have a 24/7 live-in. Because you could tell them,
Probably
okay, you know
not.
what, don't do that again.
Right.
And then, like...
Yeah, I don't know.
Was
It's
he
just-
punished for that?
No, because I had told him I'd want
Yeah,
a cup
he
of coffee
followed
as
your
soon
directions,
as I
but
wake up.
it scared you.
Right. So.
That's funny.
But I can't say there's anything really I wouldn't do again.
No?
No. If nothing else, I like taking things that I've done before and expanding on them and things like that.
What about things that you haven't explored yet? Is there anything out there that you want to explore? You said a lot of your stuff is sexual, so you've probably explored most of it in
I think I'd like
relationships.
to learn a lot more about rope. I know the basic ties, but probably don't know enough to suspend somebody. I've always suspended people with the plastic wrap, just because it's kind of very artistic and beautiful if you do it the right way. So I'd like to learn more about rope, and but that's really, I mean, everything else is learning, meeting a new partner, finding out what their freak is and exploring that more than, something I want to do.
Well, what about like the hard limits? Do you try to get them to do those because you know that that's their limits?
Yeah.
That's exactly what I do too.
Sure, yeah.
I find out what those are and like they're
Right.
going to be begging me to do those things.
Right, exactly.
So that's pretty
Yeah.
much the same way.
Right.
And do you think that they realize that that's what it's about? Because I think, because I don't get to know people that much before I start playing with them. So they don't know me. They don't know my motives or anything like that.
Right.
So they're more surprised, I think, by it. But then also impressed with themselves that they were able to cross these lines and go where they didn't think that they could go.
I think one of the most enjoyable things for me is to see a sub feel like they really pleased you. And the emotional joy, and whether it be crying or laughing or whatever, that's very rewarding for me.
Would you say
So.
that's the most rewarding? I know you
Yeah.
said orgasms too.
Yeah. Well, orgasms for me.
For you?
Yeah.
Because
Happiness for them.
you said you like to watch them orgasm too.
I like to watch women squirt.
Women
for sure.
squirt, okay.
Yeah.
But not all women do that. Or are you one of the guys that think you can make
I
every
have a-
single
I have
woman?
I have a friend who has 100% success rate. And there
Does
were
he teach classes?
he used to at our parties. We would set up a big tarp in the corner, and it was his squirting station. And there were dozens of women who've said, "I've never squirted. I'm not gonna squirt." And he turned them into puddles every time, without exception, without failure. So,
With fingering them?
well, he called it a dual. There were two fingers, and it's an in and out motion, and this moving, and I had about a 60% success rate. So.
That's not bad. I've actually seen videos on it. But you don't know when you're watching something, you don't know how real these things are.
Yeah, I've never seen a woman squirt like 3 feet up in the air and
Yeah, like
across
some
the
of
room.
those
I
crazy-
think that's a little dramatic. So
Crazy videos.
yeah.
So what's your favorite part then about this whole lifestyle, the people, the community, everything?
BDSM is a way to live your life. We live our lives through our 5 senses, and BDSM is a way to magnify and experience the best that life has to offer. For me.
So you, going forward, this always has to be a part of your life? You never can give it up? You never would want to?
It's not that I give it up at certain times, but if I'm with a partner who I have other common interests with, it doesn't have to be part of it. Eventually, amazing sex becomes part of that vanilla relationship, but do I have to spank somebody who doesn't want to be spanked? No. Do I have to? I mean, everybody wants to wear a blindfold. Everybody wants to have their hands tied up. Everybody
That's not
I've
true.
ever met. Everybody I've ever met.
Okay. So you're still getting
But I don't,
some of it.
Yeah, I don't need to go to Twisted Tryst. I don't need to go to Shibari. I don't, as long as I have enough other common interests with that partner.
What if somebody was like completely opposed to like all of those things? And
Then I
just
wouldn't be
wanted...
with them.
Okay, so that
Right.
it is a deal breaker.
Right, yes. All women, especially everybody who saw 50 Shades of Grey and thinks that's what BDSM is all about, which we know is not true. Everybody's at least expressed some interest in it.
What did you think of that book and the movie? I've heard different things.
It was not safe, it was not sane, and it was in some cases not consensual.
So you were completely against the whole thing.
Wow.
I liked how it brought it to mainstream.
Yeah.
And made people aware.
Yeah.
And made people curious that
But
maybe wouldn't have been before.
It did give the wrong impression about what the lifestyle is all about in a lot of cases.
It showed in a bad light. Is that?
That's what he thinks.
It wasn't safe, it wasn't sane, and it wasn't consensual.
Right.
A lot of it wasn't. And I didn't read the book, I just saw the movie. But you're right, it certainly brought it to the forefront. I think a movie like The Secretary with James Spader and Maggie Gyllenhaal, that to me is kind of the epitome of what the real lifestyle is about.
I haven't seen that.
Oh, The Secretary.
How old is that
James
movie?
Spader, Maggie Gyllenhaal, early 90s, mid-90s.
Okay. And that shows
and
the DS relationship?
It really explores the psychology between both the D and the S. And there's a scene, one of the final scenes in the movie is he's showing her how to make the bed properly. And that to me is like true love and what I want, my happily ever after to be like.
Is for somebody to do everything the way that you want.
Just
to compliance,
with,
right?
With a reason. I mean, right, exactly.
And you don't think that you would get bored of that? You
No.
don't need a little bit of...
No. Well, I like normal, too.
No, I don't mean...
Right.
I mean, like, non-compliance, just to keep it a little interesting.
Not intentionally.
No.
But if all the rules are being followed, then maybe I need to make the rules a little harder.
Okay, so you would just adjust then what you...
Yeah, I mean, if we're all here to self-improve ourselves and each other, then I need to help somebody self-improve by alphabetizing the spice rack.
That's interesting. So how does this affect your personal life?
I have two separate and distinct personal lives, and for me, that's the issue. I have everything we've just talked about is really 5% of my life. The other 95% is getting up and going to work and taking care of family and kids and paying the bills and et cetera, et cetera.
So yeah, you've said that you have a family. So what about your ex-wife? Was she involved in any
we
of
are
it?
still in touch. She met a man right after we got divorced and has lived happily with him. She had some issues that she needed to work on for herself.
What about with BDSM? Does she know what
She
you're
has
into?
absolutely no involvement in it anymore.
Oh, but she used to. So she knows what
She
you
was
do.
not involved in BDSM before we met, nor after we broke up.
Just during.
Right.
Okay. So it was strictly just for you, and then she could just leave that part behind.
She needed to leave that part behind to stay alive.
Okay.
So
So then you're not that open about things with people? Is it just certain people?
I am not. Everything we've talked about is private, confidential.
But you said that you do have friends that you have told this to. Are they also?
Well, I have my lifestyle friends.
Okay.
And then maybe a small handful. I mean, I do have a Dom tattoo, so if somebody sees the Dom tattoo, they're going to ask me.
What is your tattoo? Does it actually say that?
It's the kanji symbol for master.
Okay.
So.
And what would you say when they ask you?
Well, it also translates to leader. So
that's what you can say to one crowd?
Right, exactly. So it either means leader or it means bend over.
Okay. So you just like to, you have to keep it separate? Do you wish that you could just be this all the time yourself and just be open to everyone? This is who I am. This is a part of my life. Or do you like it
yes
separate?
and no. I think having secrets with a partner is part of the allure. I don't think if you're a heterosexual vanilla couple, you're going to go, express your, things about your sex life to people at work or people at church or wherever else. So I don't know that keeping your private life private just because it's something different than somebody else's private life is that big a deal. But someday I'd like to be retired. And my ex and I were also both nudists. So we would go to places like Desire in Cancun or Caliente in Tampa or Hito. I'd like to do more of that for sure.
What was your experience with those places?
My personal experience, everybody's different, but Caliente is strictly a nudist place. It's not for swingers.
Okay.
Desire.
You knew that going in?
Yeah.
Okay.
Desire is a beautiful 5-star luxury nudist/swinger resort. Although interestingly, at Desire we'd play sand volleyball for 3 or 4 hours a day, and then at Caliente we'd play volleyball. They have these small pools for volleyball, so we play a lot of volleyball in the nudist swinger
when you
BDSM
Google
community.
it. Yeah, that's what you end up seeing is the naked people hitting the balls and things like that.
And
so
I liked
games.
Hito. I didn't like Jamaica, so I wouldn't go back to Hito.
That was what's the full name?
Hedonism.
That's right. And then that's the one that you see more advertised, I guess.
Yeah, it's very commercial. It's but it's in Jamaica. It takes forever to get there, and
that's why you didn't like it. It wasn't the actual.
No, it was just too far.
Facility.
And it was not a 5-star place. It was a 3-star place. Desire is if I only go on 2 weeks of vacation every year, I want it to be a nice vacation.
Mm-hmm. So what types of events do you go to? Do you go to the munches and
I have not been to a
slashes?
munch or public event in probably 2 years.
Okay. Why is that?
Not the right partner, not the right time. Worried about other things like moving and work.
But you wouldn't feel comfortable going by yourself? You would have to go with a partner?
No, I would go by myself. And I've had friends. I keep in touch with my friends more on a one-on-one basis. Either through having lunch or going out for drinks. And I am not necessarily out to meet anybody new right now. I have a great group of friends.
Sure. So it's like you're already set. And then what? Do you guys discuss BDSM stuff? Or is it just vanilla or both?
I think with some of my vanilla friends that I've kind of brought into the inner circle, they want to absorb as much information as possible. So if it's a married couple, how do I tie this up? Why do I tie it up? How do I do this?
Okay, so they're just picking
Here's
your brain.
what we just talked about. What should I do? Kind of a mentor.
Do you playing that role?
I'll change my screen name to Jedi, BDSM Jedi.
There you go.
I do. That's part of being a leader. It's part of believing in the community and believing in BDSM and wanting to kind of spread the word in a safe manner.
And why do you feel you want to do that?
It's part of who I am.
Okay.
It's always been part of who I am. And at different points in my life where I've tried to repress it, it always just comes back. So I'm not going to fight it anymore.
And you used to fight it in the past? Because it sounds like you kind of found your way pretty early on.
Yeah. I repressed it for a long time. 12 years of Catholic schools do that too.
Okay. I did Catholic school too.
Yeah.
So did he.
Right. There you go.
Yeah, for sure. That's funny. So overall, how do you feel about the BDSM community? What do you want people to know?
If you're interested, go try it. Go show up. Go to a munch. Go online to a place like FetLife and type in whatever you think your kink or fetish is, and you will find a dozen groups with hundreds of people talking about exactly what you're interested in. On the contrary, the flip side, if you don't know what you're into, do some research. Jay Wiseman, SM 101, is still kind of the quasi-Bible of BDSM. read that. It's not scary. It shouldn't be dangerous. And I truly believe in most monogamous relationships that it can make them that much stronger. Whether they're dom-sub or both switch or, it varies over time. I think that the DS dynamic can bring a couple closer than you could possibly be without it.
I am finding that with couples that I talk to, that they have very strong relationships because there's so much communication there.
The communication and trust are at a completely different level. My ex knew if I said duck, she better duck, and never even hesitated. So.
Yeah, absolutely. I noticed that a lot. And what about misconceptions of BDSM? What would you say you think are some? I only have one. So mine is that a lot of people always think it includes or leads to sex. And in your case, it usually does. Oh. But in my case, it rarely does.
Right.
So that was pretty much my only one. And the other one is that people think that there's weird people in this, that it's all weird people with psychological disorders. And it's not. It's everyday people that lead very successful lives that just have a little kink in their life.
Right.
And it makes them complete and a better person.
I agree with both of the things that you just said. And I don't, it's too bad that everybody has to be so private about it. Because I think that the world would be a better place if people could either discuss it or, have a safe introduction to it.
I did notice with the 50 Shades movie that people were talking about it. And so, someone like you or me, if we felt comfortable, we could disclose, you know what, I am in that, and here's the real story of it. So it opened doors.
Yeah, I mean, the concept opened doors. Mm-hmm. They're, doms are not billionaires who fly around in their private jets and,
They can be.
Take them to Abu Dhabi or wherever in the $10,000 a night hotel suite. That's just not how reality is.
Well, that's just the formula for a romantic novel.
I agree.
She just threw kink into the romantic novel, but that's the typical formula for it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Great erotic movie, just not a great portrayal of the BDSM lifestyle.
I thought the movie was pretty terrible.
Yeah.
The book was okay. It isn't written that great, but I like what it did. Yeah. I like that it furthered the movement, and that, it got people interested.
Right.
Do you try to get people interested?
Yeah, sure. Mm-hmm. I think people should explore. I've been exposed to a lot of things over the last 15 years, but a lot of people don't know. They don't know what alt.com is or BDSM or, they know that maybe they like their hair pulled, but they don't know why. So yeah, anytime I get an opportunity to help educate, I do.
Have you ever taught any classes?
I have not taught any formal classes, no.
Just classes, at your home?
Passing on the information I've learned to other people.
What types of things did you go over?
Rope tying, breath play, anal training, how to take it slow and use a lot of lube. Mm-hmm. Some of the things that seem very basic for us, people have absolutely no idea where to even start. Somebody wants to try anal and they shove this huge dildo in their ass and can't understand why they're bleeding and can't walk for 3 days. So
that's true. Anything else, Adam? Do you have anything else you want to talk about?
I don't. I appreciate you having me on.
Thank you so much. It was great.
It's been a great experience.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye, guys.
Thanks for listening to Bound to Talk. Look for us on YouTube, iTunes, or visit boundtotalk.com.